So we meet yet again. And how many times have we started with talking about what is important in video games, and what nostalgic feelings drive us in search of a lost youth in this medium of art and entertainment. Funny thing that some of my fondest memories from the early childhood was to sneak out of my bed and using unusual stealth abilities for such a youngster, watching survival horrors from hiding, so the adults would not find me out. I was definitely too young to watch some of the movies that I had, but all the same there was something in them that even a child could understand. Surviving yourself and at the same time helping others to survive as well, even if that meant putting your life in danger, getting in harm's way just to save fellow human beings. Maybe it is too of a romantic or childish view on genre, but I really don't think so. We have many ways of telling heroic stories, but I think survival horror might be the most visceral one. Maybe it is the fear that heightens our senses and responsiveness to all the action on the screen. I have to be honest here and tell you about the strange condition that I am suspect to. I'm positive that are many more people like me in that regard. To be precise, when I am all alone, I feel nothing in the world. Nothing can really scare me or even make me uneasy. On the other hand, if there is anyone else with me, the feeling of dread is really strong. I even suspect that it is some kind of genetic characteristic that makes you afraid for others, to guard them, disregarding your own safety. Ah well, I am not an educated anthropologist, so what do I know? What were we talking about? Ah yes, survival horrors. But what about video games in this genre? I am glad you asked. I played plenty of them, starting with classics like Resident Evil, Alone in the Dark or Silent Hill, and playing some of the niche ones like Alien Resurrection. But there was a trilogy along the way that my good friend Zach introduced me to, namely Dead Space game series. It was a glorious time in my life. Okay, glorious is the wrong word here. I was between jobs, so I had enough time to play through Skyrim and all three of Dead Space titles. It was then when I realized my strange condition related to being afraid. When I was playing all alone, even in the middle of the night, I was simply enjoying the game, taking in the atmosphere, and solving all the puzzles along the way, and fighting off enemies in order to progress further. But boy oh boy, when Zachary was present on voice chat, even if he said nothing for prolonged periods of time, then anything could spook me out or jump scare me while playing Dead Space. Holy cow, that was or rather mind-opening. So no wonder that I wanted to play the Callisto Protocol since the first trailer hit YouTube. After all, it was a game from the same developers with the same setting and premise. So imagine my disappointment after not so good critical reception. But still, I put the game on my to-play list. I just had to try it for myself, but not for a full asking price, that was for sure. The day finally came. Here I am today, reviewing it for God knows what reason, but still, hear me out. Bloody hell, even the opening scene in Callisto Protocol is so similar to first Dead Space title. The main difference being that we are heading towards a planet that was used for a prison complex instead of drifting spaceship. The whole opening sequence is very cinematic and well made. I was really impressed, so I thought to myself, if this is how it starts, it surely can be as bad as people said it was. But I was yet to experience it for myself. When you finally get to control Jacob, cause this is the name of our protagonist here, you're gonna need to make it through a prison in full pandemonium mode, rioting inmates, mutated monsters, fires everywhere and gates without fuses. I'm not going to talk much about the story here, because there is not much of it, and I would like to avoid any spoilers for those of you who are wanting to go through the whole experience yourselves. The whole plot is very simple, yet it feels very good. It feels like a decent sci-fi horror film that you watch on the weekend's night. Ending of the story is very predictable, but wait, there is a final transmission DLC, which to be honest is very short, maybe like 2 hours of gameplay tops, where the base game took me around 7.5, and the ending of the DLC I don't know how to feel about. Oh well, it is what it is. Characters in game are not very well developed at all. We do not know much about them. Yes, we get to know some details from their lives before the protocol started in order to help understand their motivations, but there's not much of it. Surprisingly, it was not detrimental to my enjoyment of the game. Atmosphere was more important to me this time around. Still, Jacob is my favorite type of hero in the storytelling. One that gives the impression of giving a flying duck only about himself. But as we get to know him a little bit better, it is revealed that he's a strong and focused man that helps others even if it means risking his own life. Yes, he's very flawed, he has his sins, and yet it is so very admirable that he does everything he can to redeem himself. This is the main character that I can relate to. I have only one funny gripe with storytelling here, because, strangely enough, despite sweating profusely and not drinking even a zip of fluids for the entirety of the game, none of the characters dies from dehydration. Fascinating. Okay, so if there is not much to talk about when it comes to the story and characters, then how about the gameplay in this Nomen Omen game? Sure, let's discuss that, starting with controls, which are simple enough, very smooth and pleasant, with one exception. You need to hold down sprint button. I am not a fan of that. Maybe it was intentional in order to force players to slow walk more and enjoy the atmosphere. Who knows, you can't run in certain areas, only walk, so that would indicate I am onto something here. The strangest decision has been made when it comes to the combat in the Callisto Protocol. It is real-time combat that kinda feels like it was mutated together with the turn-based one. You attack when you see the opening and the rest of the time you dodge enemy attacks, holding straight left or straight right button. It is only for melee fighting, where shooting is all nice and decent, very similar to how it was in Dead Space series. You can combo them together because if you perform enough of successful melee hits, then you get a chance to shoot with extra auto-aim for the increased damage. To be honest, it didn't feel increased to me, but what the hell do I know, I haven't measured it in any way. Another annoying thing is that switching ranged weapons takes too much steps. Not advised to do it in the middle of combat because you need to press switch weapon keybind, then scroll the mouse wheel to pick what you want, and then press the confirmation button. Who in the right mind thought it was a good idea, implementing it in the survival horror game? Yet another stupid mechanic is where you need to stomp that enemy in order to extract loot from the corpse. But the weird thing is that you cannot prematurely stomp and kill enemies that are supposed to quote-unquote surprise you a little bit later in the game sequence. That's not cool and immersion breaking. Ah yes, enemies, let's talk about our foes. So the most dangerous ones at the start of our survival adventure are security bots. Huge, chunky, powerful synthetic humanoid robots. They are a force to be reckoned with, cause you are unlikely to win the encounter with one of them, so better to avoid them till later in the game. Most of the other enemies consist of several types of mutated humans that are more or less equivalent to zombies known from other games. Nothing out of the ordinary here, but it is still not very fun to fight them because they are queuing up to hurt you. So you must finish them one by one. Yes, sometimes one of them is trying to break the cursed cycle and to attack you out of their turn, which smacks other enemies, which helps you a little bit, and it is a nice element that I wished was present more often here. The most annoying type of enemy must be that jumpy son of a gun with human face and worm-like body that stretches on longer distance than one would expect. It is hard to spot the place from which this bugger will attack, so killing it before it jumps you and steals a little bit of your health is unlikely on your first playthrough. Last but not least, we got a total abomination and a joke of an enemy type, because they are totally blind and supposed to have ultra-sensitive hearing. Well, but when the AI for them is not working as it should, the whole thing just falls apart. So you repeatedly sneak past those fuckers and you stab them in the back and finish them off. During all of that, there is a lot of noises which other blind enemies apparently can hear, even if they are at the arm's reach from you. What a mess. Okay, so what about the gameplay outside of combat? Well, it is mostly fine. For one thing, tutorials are very minimalistic yet very helpful. Good job here. We got a stealth system implemented here, and it's useful in some sections of the game when you have an option to avoid some of the more powerful enemies, or to stab in the back more of those annoying fuckers. Some of the loot chests contain jumpy facehuggers instead of items, so that's an element that some people like, while others hate it. The whole progression system is contained in the form of upgrading weapons using Callisto credits, which you find mostly from stomped enemies. And by the way, why the hell Prison Ward has its own currency? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. At the beginning of the game, our inventory is too restricted. It gets full after picking just a few items. Fortunately, it doubles later in the game, but still, I felt it was too restrictive. On the good side, automatic saves are made quite often, so I was never frustrated that I lost a lot of progress on death, so that's that. On the technical level, I must say that I was really impressed by the Callisto Protocol. I think it uses Unreal Engine 4 to its limits. The game is very scalable, from ray tracing in Bonanza all the way down to the frame rates in hundreds on low settings. Small tip at the start though, game choked a lot when running graphical tests. What helped was setting shadows from high to medium, and then instead of dropping to mid-40s in the most demanding place, it dropped only to around 80 frames per second. I have only one problem with changing settings. You cannot do it while inside the game. You can only use main menu at the start screen and then test it by loading a save game or built-in performance benchmark tool. Generally the game looks really good, especially when it comes to the faces of characters during cutscenes. Another impressive thing is that it has probably the best light and shadow interplay with excellent black levels after in-game calibration. Animations in combat and in cutscenes are superb as well. Maybe with one exception, lip sync could be better, way better. I get it, it is very hard to do, so that's that. There are sadly some more exceptions to all of these visual candies. For once, fire effects are rendered in lower frame rates than the rest of the game. I guess it uses old technique where you pre-render some things and then you just play them out in game engine. It looks out of place here. Another suspects are some smoke and volumetric effects. They sometimes look very low resolution and they move not in the right way considering camera movements. Other than that, there is too many of strobing lights to my liking. I know it is a part of the setting of the game, but we could ease on that front just a little bit, so we don't get sore eyes after some sections of a prison, not even mentioning those of us with photosensitive epilepsy conditions. There is also a light coming from our character, but there is no light source on him. Very strange indeed. It changes when we get a suit of armor, fortunately. All in all, it is one of the best looking games that I've seen so far, so good job on that front. I'm not going to talk long about the audio side of the game. It is a very good mix of ambient sounds and music, building thick atmosphere. Sound effects are decent, fitting and nothing out of place, I guess. The only grudge that I have considering the audio in the game is that sometimes audio bugs out a little bit for like a second. Nothing major, but unfortunately it reminds you that you are playing a video game, so it is a little bit immersion breaking. Even though Callisto Protocol is a very flawed game, where some simple changes could make it way better. Okay, some of the changes would need to be major, like the whole melee combat system. It is still a very visceral experience. Maybe I'm just a sucker for survival horror genre, where you don't need to grab the base and other name things present in modern survival games. It feels like home to me, so familiar, so good. This is what I grew up on, both in movies and video games. So even if I think fundamentally the Callisto Protocol is not a very good game, for me it was a good experience. I was finishing gaming sessions with this title, wanting to go back and play some more, just to be in the game world for a moment longer. For some games, even if I want to finish them and see how they will end, oftentimes I catch myself clicking corresponding icon on desktop reluctantly, not really looking forward to play some more. So maybe it is more important to simply experience a game, just to be there and enjoying it for what it is, rather than trying to finish it complete to get to know how the story ends. Maybe it is like the old saying goes, it is not about the destination, it is about the journey. The more I think about it, the more I come to the conclusion that it has always been this way, but I just simply forgot it for a while. I will leave you with that thought. Until another great late review.